what's really going on in our country. Because what is happening is a sweeping effort to disempower and disenfranchise people of color, poor people, and young people from one end of our country to the other.
If you have any idea what this woman is talking about, please let me know. We'll turn to our panel, and maybe they could help us out. On the Malzberg political panel, it's Rachel Campos-Duffy, conservative pundit, national spokesperson for the LIBRE initiative, and David Goodfriend, Democratic strategist, former deputy staff secretary to President Clinton. And David, let me start with you, since she's on your side and you got pictures with her hanging behind you on that wall.
Yes,
what the heck is she talking about?
Here's what she's talking about. In state after state, there have been statutes passed, they've been formulated in a single group called ALEC, that are designed, intended, courts have found this, don't take my word for it, designed, intended to depress voter participation. And they do it in the following way. They say you have to show up with a driver's license, and some people can't afford or don't have a driver's license, and they become disenfranchised. Now, don't take my word for it. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court, federal courts in Texas, other courts have already ruled that these are intended, that the intent of the legislature was to push away, deny the vote to many people. And it is aimed at young people, students, Latinos, African Americans.
Right, because David, they can't get an ID, they can't open a bank account, they can't go to the doctor, they can't do anything without the ID that those laws say you need to vote. So I don't know how they're living their lives. Must be they're trying to racially discriminate.
But Steve, that's exactly what the courts.
Now you want to talk about the courts? You want to go about Obama's 0 for 13 with the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously? Then you don't want to talk about the courts. Rachel, the polls showed yesterday. Wait a minute. The poll showed yesterday from Rasmussen that 76% of Americans favor voter ID and 55% of Democrats favor voter ID, Rachel.
Of course they do. Listen, as a minority myself, a Hispanic woman, I find this kind of talk very patronizing. This idea that because we have brown skin or black skin, we can't make our way to the driver's license place to get an ID. And by the way, the amount of money that they're spending trying to sue states for imposing really common sense voter ID laws, they could use that money to go and help the poor people that they claim can't get their way or make their way over to driver's license. Let me just add one more thing, and that is that as a Hispanic woman, so many of us have risked so much to come to this country, and part of the reason we love this country is because there is rule of law, and because things like elections can be counted on to be true and not full of fraud. And this is something that I think most Hispanics understand better than others, most other Americans, that keeping our elections clean is part of why we want to be in this country.
Go ahead, David.
So Rachel, if you'll note, the National Council of La Raza supports efforts to make sure that these statutes are not passed. And the reason is because when you talk about fraud, when you actually dig down and ask what percentage of total voters have actually been found to be fraudulent, it's way, way below 1%. And if you ask what percentage of voters are actually turned away from polls as a result of this, it's quite high. And that's why NCLR and other Latino organizations here in Washington support efforts to roll back these anti-voter things. Look, let's just get down to brass tacks. Why be afraid of democracy? Why be afraid of more participation?
I'm not afraid of it. I'm all for it.
You are.
No, listen, Hillary Clinton came out and said, look, let's just make it automatic. You're 18 years old and you're automatically registered. I'm okay with that, but I still think you need to show an ID to show that you are who you say you are, and don't tell me that we've seen Mickey Mouse vote.
I was just going to say Mickey Mouse, Rachel. Absolutely.
Yes.
Someone showed up at Eric Holder's voting place and pretended they were Eric Holder. You know, David, it speaks to who your party is, that they are afraid with fraud running rampant in so many elections and people voting in 2 states at one time, that you're just saying, oh, you just show up, say you're Joe Blow, and we'll believe you're Joe Blow, to the most sacred right we have of voting for who represents us.
You're making up a problem that doesn't exist.
Really? Okay. Okay.
You don't have the numbers. You cannot prove. And
I know. Oh, no. Yes, I can. I can. There are studies. Check out. I think I don't want to say the name, but the congresswoman in Texas, where fraud was rampant, where people put down addresses of buildings that didn't exist. It happens all the time.
Dead people, we see it all the time. Again, what are you guys afraid of on the other side of this issue? What are you afraid of? Because all of us should really want elections to be clean. Of course we want them accessible, but it really, the amount of people that may struggle to get to a driver's license bureau, that could be solved with Democrats who are so caring and concerned about that, putting the money they're putting towards lawsuits towards helping those people get to the driver's license bureau.
That's what I'm afraid of. Here's exactly what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid of Republicans ending the Voting Rights Act, which they did. I'm afraid of Republicans putting up new roadblocks to new voters like students, which they have. I'm afraid of a shrinking instead of a growing percentage of Americans allowed to vote. I'm afraid for our democracy and our American way of life.
Hey, David, let me ask you a question. You want convicted felons to vote when they get out?
I want somebody who's done their time.
Do you want convicted felons to vote when they get out? Yes or no?
I want someone who's done their time.
I'll take that as a yes, and I think that speaks volumes, that you want convicted felons. You know what? When you commit a felony, you lose that privilege, my friend. Don't commit a felony, and you'll be able to vote. So this is insane. You want criminals, you want illegals, you want fraudulent people to line the poll booths, and that's how you guys get elected. It's a disgrace. We're coming back.
It will only turn us back into a banana republic.
We're coming back, part 2. Don't go away. All right, just to finish up with the panel, who we welcome back, Rachel Campos-Duffy and David Goodfriend. Before the break, I was saying how Democrats want illegals and people who were felons and fraudulent people to vote. And David, I thought I heard you saying something about me being un-American. Go ahead, because I didn't get on the air, so repeat it.
Yes, Steve. Now listen, I like you a lot. But when you talk that way, you sound un-American to me, because our democracy was founded on the notion of being in favor of the people voting, not some king, not somebody deciding who gets to vote and who doesn't. When you say, Steve, felons, well, I say if somebody has done their time and comes back into society and gets a job, you're darn right they should be able to vote.
Can I tell you what's un-American? I'm going to tell you what's un-American. What's un-American is trying to pass laws that turn us back into the banana republic that so many of us have left behind. We come to America because we want a country where rule of law and clean elections can be counted on.
So how is it that signing up every 18-year-old, unless they opt out?
I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is when the 18-year-old shows up, I want to make sure that that person is an American citizen.
Okay, so you guys, I get it. You guys are focused on the ID part of this. I said if somebody doesn't have a driver's license or shouldn't be able to. Here's the thing that is really hard for people inside the Beltway to understand, or people in New York.
I live in rural Wisconsin.
Here's a hard thing to understand. Let me just get this out here. A court, the main court in Pennsylvania, found that when a senior citizen woman could not afford to go get and pay for a driver's license. Did that shut
It's
her
not a
out?
driver's license. First of all, you're misrepresenting.
Why
David,
doesn't La Raza give her the money to go and, they do all kinds of quote-unquote community organizing and services. They could provide the money to help those people get to a driver's license bureau. I don't know why you want to. And it's not only a driver's license, it's any form of photo ID that the government would sign, because not everybody drives. But you know what? That old lady also can't go to the bank. She can't go to the doctor. She can't do anything. So maybe there should be something in place to get her that ID, as Rachel says. Let's move on. Let's move on and talk about the numbers that came out today, the jobs numbers. 280,000 jobs created, which is better than the usual schlepping along at 200,000, which we've been in for about 6-7 years now. But what disturbs me, and Rachel, you weigh in on this, with all the people, with more Americans working part-time, not by choice, and that's over 6.5 million, with record numbers out of the workforce, record numbers of women out of the workforce. We have 25 million foreign-born workers employed in this country, and the number is rising. Yet I hear we need immigration
so that you know it'll create more jobs. It's creating jobs for foreigners.
But wait a minute, let me just talk about something else. I happen to live in a part of the country where things are actually made, where there's a lot of manufacturing. I've talked to a lot of the people who own and run those companies, and what they tell me is that they can't find enough people to work. It's gotten to the point where they're actually willing to pay for the training, you know, as long as you're, you know, drug-free and willing to show up for work on time. They'll pay for the training for you to be a welder, to be a truck driver, whatever it takes to get people working. And I think what's happening is that government has gotten in the way, and a lot of these unemployment benefits, while they are great, it's a great entitlement that everyone deserves if they're on hard times, have become so expanded and so long that people simply are not, and the other benefits that come from government have made it so that it's not, people are making economically rational choices to not work because it almost comes out equal. All right, David, or better
David,
to not work.
We don't, David, I'm sorry, but I screwed up. We don't have time for your response. You got the beginning, Rachel gets the end. Have a great weekend. We're coming back, folks. Don't go away.